والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. I'll give you a little bit of background of why Siddiq probably chose myself. One of the roles that I play in Glasgow is in a charity called Unity Family Services, which is a charity set up to deal with family issues in the Muslim community, because obviously my field is Islamic family law. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is from my experience of dealing with cases. Alhamdulillah, even though it's just a part-time organisation, and in essence we don't really promote the service that much, even with that I'm dealing with approximately 100 cases a year. Those cases are varied, so you have people, primarily it's about marriage, so marital problems, divorce, but it can be bereavement, domestic abuse, forced marriages. Family life covers every aspect, so you can imagine it can be very varied. So that gives you, when you're dealing with that on a weekly basis, you're getting an insight into people's lives and seeing, or hearing things that you would not normally hear. So you get a really accurate picture of what's happening, because a lot of times I was talking to the brothers before, if your da'wah is in the mosque or in Islamic circles, you're going to get a certain type of person coming to those places. But the people who are not as practicing or are not inclined to come to the mosque, you have no access to them. It's only when they're in a crisis and they're forced to come to you, do you actually, through questioning them, talking to them, you actually appreciate where they're coming from. And a lot of people are living very traumatic lives. And I always say that, from all the things that I do, this is probably the least enjoyable aspect of my da'wah work, because it's not enjoyable to sit and listen to people either bickering about their marital life, and there's children involved, and you can see divorces on the cards, and you're thinking about these children, you're thinking about them, or someone's telling you they were sexually abused as a child, and now they're getting proposals and they have a problem of taking that forward. Taking these things on, you take on their emotions. It's not an easy thing to do, and the unfortunate thing is a lot of us, we live in complete oblivion to what's happening in real people's lives. So I think the reason that is titled it to be Breaking Taboos is because it's something which is uncomfortable, and something, I don't take any pleasure in speaking about it. The only reason I do it is because it's necessary, because until we appreciate or face up to the fact that there's a problem, we're never going to do anything about it. So it's unfortunate we have to discuss this, but we cannot get away from it. We can not afford to take the approach of the ostrich. So an ostrich, when it senses danger, it puts its head into the sand, and a lot of the times this is what happens. A couple of years ago, what happened was I did a project with the Scottish Government on raising awareness about domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is a massive problem in all communities. They say in the UK, they say that there's a domestic abuse or domestic violence, they call it in England, call to the police every minute. And what's behind that call, they say on average a woman will be assaulted 35 times before she makes that call. So this is major. You go to Women's Aid, their website, and the first time I read this I never believed it. They say that 2 women a week in the UK are killed through domestic violence, higher than cancer. So this is a problem affecting non-Muslims as well. So it affects us, just as it affects them, it affects us as well. So what happened was I wrote a leaflet which I brought with me, and I travelled up and down Scotland, met all the imams in the mosques, and some of them were aware of it. And I remember one imam in particular, may Allah bless him, but he was just he goes, "This does not happen in our community. It doesn't happen. It happens in non-Muslims, it happens, but it does not happen in our community." And I was like, well, after you read my leaflet you might change your mind, because it's got statistics. But that's honestly what he felt. He honestly believed Muslims don't do this. It's like, a lot of the problems that we see in the world, terror attacks, they say Muslims can't do that. It cannot be, a Muslim cannot have done that. That kind of attitude, unfortunately, it does happen, because not all Muslims are awliya. They're the reason why Sharia has punishments. Why has it got punishments? It's because some people need to be deterred from, unsavory behavior. So, this does happen, and we have to accept it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is really the ethos I think we should have when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kumu qawwamina bil qist, that be, O you who believe, be maintainers of justice. We should always stand up for the truth. And the next bit is very, very important. Shuhada lillah, witnesses for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, walau ala anfusikum, even if it is on yourselves. So we should always, it shouldn't be Muslim is a Muslim that did it or non-Muslim did it. No. Right is right, wrong is wrong. If something's wrong, we have to say it's wrong, whether it's comfortable or not. So we should always go from that premise, that verse of the Quran. And if people want to go back to it, it's Surah Nisa, chapter 4, verse number 135. So in terms of us as a community, obviously we are going through generational changes. What's happening is our community is evolving all the time. So as time is going on, we're an evolving community. So things which existed 30, 40 years ago, like for example, divorce 30, 40 years ago wasn't that common. It's very rare to hear of somebody got divorced. Now, I'm sure probably everyone in this room knows somebody either going through marital problems or divorced, and it's not even people that have been divorced once. I'm dealing with people who have been divorced twice. So, that's clearly something which has completely changed. They actually estimate, although there's no clear studies, they estimate that the divorce rate amongst the Muslim community in the UK is about 1 in 8. 1 in 8 marriages now end in divorce. And obviously it's on the increase. Now when divorce happens, that has repercussions. And one of the consequences of divorce is single parents. So again, something which was unheard of or very rare to find 30, 40 years ago, we have now, single parents, either single mums or sometimes single fathers. And therefore, certain things which actually happened in the past, which we've lost, and we're in more need of it now than we were then, something what I call communal parenting. If you remember 30, 40 years ago, if you were up to no good and an uncle saw you, there was he had full permission to clip you around the ears, and your parents would approve of it. Now that wouldn't happen, because you clip someone's kid around the ears, the people that are going to get you are the parents. You see, so things have changed, but now we're actually in more need of communal parenting than we were in the past, because in the past most people had two parents. Now you've got a lot of children being brought up in single parent families. So this kind of community parenting, we need to revive that. And because they say, if you look at a lot of studies, if people are involved in this kind of area, especially for young males who are in single parent families are in dire need of a strong male figure. So if the father's not there, then a relative or somebody else needs to kind of fill that void. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for that person. And that's for those who physically don't have the father there. Now you have what you call fathers who are present, but they might as well be absentee fathers. They're there physically, but they have no input into the child's life whatsoever. Then on top of that, you've got people who've got fathers, but they're spending some time away from the family because of criminal behavior. So yourselves, the Muslim prison population rate is not something. It's not one of the things that we can be really proud of, that we're excelling in. Unfortunately, it's one of the areas we are excelling in. They say that the percentage of prison population, which is Muslim, is 13%. 13%. And our population size in the UK is just under 5%. So, and it was in 1997, our population in the prisons was 6%. 6%. So in the space of 16 years, it's gone from 6% to 13%. Again, not a pretty figure to look at or to talk about, but it's a reality. So you've got all these fathers who are, And then obviously what kind of example are they setting for their children? You know, if your father's in for something, for drugs or something, what kind of example is that setting for a young male in the family? So there's clearly an issue when it comes to parenting, and this is why now, like Sadiq was saying, I do like courses on premarital and in marriage, and the next one I'm thinking about is parenting, because again, people have this notion that it worked for me, so it worked for my children. You know, so we were brought up in a certain environment, and our parents brought up us in a certain way, and a lot of people then think, this happens in marriage as well, because what happens is they look at their parents and they think, well, worked for them, or the parents think worked for us, so we'll just do the same with our children, it works for them. Not understanding that our families and our communities have evolved, and we have different external factors which we didn't have. I mean, I remember in the 80s coming home from school, and you used to had 3 channels, then they added channel 4, and they had what what was it like children's hour or whatever from 4 o'clock to 5, and you had Blue Peter, right, and then that was it, and then they added Neighbours and Home and Away. But the thing was, basically you had 1 hour, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and that was it. There was no other. Now you've got the Disney Channel, this channel, that channel. You can just watch cartoons all day long. So even our reality is different. We didn't have mobile phones, computer games. I remember when they first came in. Now you're going to think how old I am. Computer, was it Commodore 64, right? And it was just like Space Raiders, whatever. It was very basic. It was very, very basic. Now look at it. Every kid's got a smartphone. Now you want iPads, games. Forget it. The games are becoming like movies. So their reality is completely different from ours when we were growing up, and we have to understand that. That's why the Children's Society report in 2009, and this is just a general report, they concluded that life for a child now has become a lot more challenging than it was in the past, because they've got so many things to contend with. Now, what's important is, as our communities go forward, we really have to start thinking about the younger generation and what kind of alternatives we're giving them. Because if you look at statistically comparing our community to other communities, we're actually the youngest of all communities. A third of the Muslim community in the UK is under 16. They say a half, or almost a half, or just over a half, is under 25. So anyone over 25 here, you're in a minority. Yeah. So, and they say that in the UK now, 1 in 10 under 25s in Britain today is a Muslim. So all the population, right, everyone under 25, every 10th person is a Muslim. So we're a very young community. And that's why we really need to start putting our time and resources and efforts and thinking into our youth, because ultimately they're obviously going to be the future. And like I said, they have got a lot of challenges now. So they have their own cultural identity, their Islamic identity. They've got all the things that are mentioned, and also on top of that, they've got things which we maybe didn't have to deal with in school. Sex education, for example, is a big issue now, because obviously the government wants to keep introducing it at a younger age. Now they're thinking of single-sex or same-sex marriages. I know it's been debated in Scotland, and it's been debated in England as well. I'm predicting that it's going to become law at some point. So if that happens, when the definition of marriage changes, then obviously that's going to be normal, and then that at some stage will then be taught in schools, because that's the next logical thing. If that's normal, then we can't have discrimination, and so it's going to get very difficult for young people. And they're going to have a lot of challenges, which is why parents need to be now more involved than they ever have been in the past. A lot of times in the 80s, a lot of our parents were working very hard, because that's what they'd done their best at that time in terms of funding us into education and stuff like that. But if you really think about how much input like a lot of fathers had, it wasn't that much, because they were working 7 days a week, 6 days a week. You cannot do that same model now. If you do that, you're going to blink and wake up and realise your 16-year-old is not listening, and it's off the rails. So, we shouldn't be dealing with issues when they happen. What we should be thinking about is how do we prevent things from happening. So we should be looking at preventative work, long term, preempting things rather than waiting for things to come, slaps you in the face, then you wake up, then you're paying catch up. So a lot of the time it's too late. A lot of the times I deal with a couple, I can't do anything because it's gone so far. They hate each other, and it's just the fact they want to say, well, we tried to go and see somebody. The real solution is, first of all, educating them, which is why I do the courses, and then also telling them, look, when you have a problem, go and see somebody. Do not let it fester, do not let it grow into a snowball and then we can't stop it. Even if it might sound petty, but come and seek advice, get some guidelines, and nip it in the bud before it gets any worse. So this attitude, again, because in the 30s, 40s, your parents are going to say, well, I went to a counsellor, we turned out okay. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. We're evolving as people, and we now need to look at new initiatives which we would never have thought of in the past. So even like relationship counselling, this kind of thing is a new concept, but it needs to happen. If you look at the divorce rate, it's very clear. So the issue of sex and also healthy sex life within marriage, this is a very taboo subject that nobody wants to talk about. And I've had so many, because obviously I deal with couples, I get to hear a lot of stuff, and a lot of people put pressure on me, look, somebody needs to clarify, because we have all these questions and there's no forum for an explicit discussion on these things. And this is part of our deen. It's part of our deen. The Prophet ﷺ, we know from hadith how he interacted with his wives, how they had a ghusl and so on. And it's not something to be ashamed of. It's part of our deen. We need to know about it. And it needs a little bit of courage for us to come out. Obviously, we have to think of what's the best forum and the best way of doing it. Linked to that is, if this is not dealt with, it leads to people being dissatisfied in their sex life. Coupled with that, now, with the bombardment, you could say, of sexual imagery and just the environment. Yourselves used to go in the petrol station to get some petrol, and the dodgy stuff was always on the top shelf. Now, as soon as you open the door, you need to lower your gaze. It's just everything's changing, and you need to be so much more alert. TV, advertisements, everything is, it's got a sexual connotation to it. That has an impact. So we have to think of how do we encourage married couples to be sexually satisfied so they don't go outside, because if you don't have that, then what happens is they start looking outside, and this is where you have extramarital affairs coming, and this is also on the increase. It's also happening. And now with technology, with texts, Facebook, all the rest of it, it's become very easy to hook up with the opposite sex. So the haram's becoming so easy, and if we make the halal difficult for people, we're just kind of pushing them. So we have to start being real about this. Linked to that is pornography, and again the easy accessibility of it. This is something that's not just happening to us. Non-Muslims are talking about this. I don't know if you guys remember, there was an article back in February. I made a little video about it, and it was about the sexualization of children, and it was about this girl who'd committed suicide. Well, she fell off because a boy at school had taken pictures of her and he'd put it on the internet. And the whole art was a disgrace, that the particle and the stuff that young school children are up to. It's unbelievable. But this is where people have to become realistic, that if you don't talk about these things, if you don't educate them, they'll find it themselves. The internet's there. They'll find another forum. So it's better that we control it rather than they go somewhere else. So this whole issue of pornography, because it's become so easy, I'm seeing it in couples, how it's affecting them. Then it affects their own sexual satisfaction, and then it obviously leads to other haram activities. Then you have, on top of that, I'm just piling it on now, right? On top of that, you have people then struggling with their own sexuality. So you have now people coming to you saying, look, I'm attracted to my own sex, I don't want to get married. And so you got those people struggling with their own issues. Also, they need support. Then we come on to the issue of marriage. And you know yourselves, I mean, for years people have been pushing me. I've resisted it, but I gave in a couple of months ago about finding them partners, the whole rishta thing, yeah. And I said, look, you know, you've got aunties and uncles to do that kind of stuff, right? Just leave me out of it, let me do other things. But anyway, the pressure's been put on. People got problems. That's what I'm saying. This stuff never happened before. Now people are saying, I can't get married, I can't find a partner. You got people who are divorced saying, no one wants to touch me, I'm divorced. Then, like I said, you know, I mean, because I'm dealing with people who are not satisfied in their married lives, looking outside, you've got then people, you know, having affairs with divorced people because they can't get married, they can't have an outlet. You can see where it's going. So this whole issue we really need to look at. And now you've got new Muslims, the majority of whom are what? Women. They all need husbands. Born Muslim women are saying we can't find husbands, so you add on some, you know, new Muslims who are majority women as well. It's even, and the cultural issues of them trying to marry, say, like a Pakistani or whatever, and you can imagine what difficulties they have. I remember a rishta kind of person in another city emailed me saying that, or was on my Facebook, I can't remember, saying that she had a convert sister who had had children from a previous relationship, and she'd been looking for a while, and she said to her, look, if you don't find me somebody, I'm just going to find someone. I'm going to find a non-Muslim man. I know it's haram, I know it's wrong, but I can't. I've run out of patience. So this is somebody didn't like that, right? So this is the issue that that person just got to breaking point, said, look, I can't find somebody, I'm just going to find a non-Muslim. I know it's haram, I know it's wrong, but that's it, I'm going to do that. And now you've actually got, I don't know if you guys read, about a year ago, there was a report on Al Jazeera about the growing phenomena of Muslim women marrying non-Muslim men. And surprise, surprise, there's some imam they found who, well, these days you can find an imam to do anything, right? You'll find some, they call him imam, we don't know who he is, what qualifications he got, but anyway, this guy was marrying Muslim women to non-Muslim men. And it's growing, they're saying it's a growing phenomena. You had and in France they had the first gay Muslim marriage. Again, an imam performed the nikah, you know, of two men. I don't know how that works, but that's what they were calling it. So, with the excess of women, and you guys know yourselves, there's a large amount of women now in the late 20s, early 30s, not married, and there's nothing wrong with them practicing, you know, professional, everything, educated. They just can't find, suitable partners. What do we do with them? Where as a community going forward, what happens? We can't leave it, obviously. Then you have to think, well, what do we do about it? A couple of years ago, I said on radio, we should stop men marrying from abroad. It didn't go down too well. But one of the reasons I was saying that was because I said, look, I'm telling all these sisters, right, if the men keep going abroad, who's going to marry our sisters? You know, so then, like I said, there's a few other things which are happening, which just are consequences of the way our families are evolving, like the elderly. Now do you have elderly care centres here? Not yet. Muslim ones, yeah. You're having now some elders who are going into care homes, something that would never have happened back in the 70s or 80s. Now, because the extended family is broken down to a certain degree, those people, or maybe they're not as practicing and so on, if the elderly person becomes burdensome, some of them are ending up in care homes. Domestic abuse and forced marriage, don't get me started, right, because I've done a lot of work. I brought a couple of leaflets, you can take them away. This one's on forced marriage. So what happened was, I did one on domestic abuse, and then when the Forced Marriage Act came in Scotland a couple of years ago, then the government said, look, we want to do something on this. Again, forced marriage is unfortunately still happening. It just doesn't happen in the Muslim community, but it definitely does happen. surprisingly, a lot of the positive feedback I got from this campaign came from England, from your neck of the woods actually, from the kind of Midlands. A lot of people were saying Jazakallah khair for speaking about it, and it's a big problem and so on. So I think there's definitely issues here which are not being spoken about, and I think that's probably one of the aims of what the organisers have behind this. This is very uncomfortable, the next one, which is child sex abuse. Very uncomfortable. The Muslim, is it the youth helpline? I think they say about 16% of their calls are related to this. Again, usually it's a relative. Horrific the impact it has on people's lives. I've dealt with a couple. I've dealt with both female and male. I remember the male, that was just awful. The case was awful. He's married now. He's got children, and I mean, alhamdulillah, he's very lucky. His wife stuck by him, but he's had all sorts of problems, psychological problems, and he got involved in drugs, and he's just you know, really, you really feel sorry for the guy. His life's just gone from worse to worse. And he was telling me that he has to, you know, when they have family functions, he has to face his abuser at family functions, and his abuser will kind of come up and, you know, give him a hand round the shoulder and how you doing, and this guy's 40 now, but he's got to live with this, you know, and it's really impacted on his life, and then on obviously his children, and again it's really uncomfortable, but that you'll be amazed the amount of people that have some experience of this, and I mean, my cases are just going up in this area, and then they're not sure how to, you know, progress with their lives. They feel guilt. You know, you can imagine the kind of issues that they go through. Drug abuse. Well, like I said, our population in prisons is quite high. A lot of them are drug-related crimes. Drug abuse is obviously going to impact on the family. Brings its own problems. I don't really need to get into it. Alcohol abuse, again, something which we wouldn't have. It probably existed to a lesser extent in the past, but it was always hidden. It was always seen as something. Even the person that did it saw it something shameful, and he shouldn't really be doing it. Now it's become open, and people, you know, the brothers are telling me sometimes you've got fathers who've got pictures with their, you know, sons with alcohol. You know, no shame at all, just floating this about. This is another area that I'm looking to do a bit of work in with one of the brothers down here, is adoption and fostering. So you've got children now who get taken into care, and because of the lack of fostering parents from the Muslim community, it's not my problem, you know. People don't want to get involved, it's a headache. And adoption, some Muslim children end up with non-Muslim foster parents, non-Muslim adoptive parents. In fact, I just had a question from a social worker the other day about a 12-year-old boy or girl who the non-Muslim fostering parents want her to go to dance class, and the Muslim parents were objecting to it, so it was a big discussion, because they're by law obliged to take into consideration the child's faith and culture. So this is unfortunate, you know, that we can't even look after our own children. They have to go to non-Muslims, you know. It's not enough. It's not as if there's a lack of Muslims in this country, you know, but it's just that they're not willing to take on other people's, because they see it as other people's problems. This is a funny thing, right, is when you hear, we're one ummah, right, Palestine, we're one ummah, you know, all these other issues, we're one ummah. When it comes to this, where's the ummah gone? Yeah. So a lot of it's words, because it's free. It's free to shout and say things. It doesn't cost you anything. But when you have to put your money to your mouth, you have to live up to what you're saying, and take on a child, a problematic child, for example, and it's going to disturb your life. You think, well, it's not really my problem. So that really needs to, we need to look into that, because that's a growing problem. I mean, I can probably go on and on, but I think that's probably been enough taboos touched there for today. But I really just wanted to touch on all the kind of issues that we're facing. We have to deal with this. It's not going to go away. In fact, it's just going to get worse. So we're already paying catch up. The the mechanisms that we have today, they're not sufficient to deal with the issues we have. But that is because 10 years ago, we did not foresee this. And so today, if we do not foresee or we don't look at the future and we don't put in mechanisms today, in 10 years it's going to be even worse. So we really cannot afford to be inactive when it comes to this area. We really need to put our heads together. It's not a one-person job. It's not a two-person job. It's a community. So we have to, as a community, if it's going, and you never know, it might affect you in your own personal capacity. Never say never. So we have to get together and really think, okay, what can we do? How can we support one another? Because after all, that's what being one ummah is all about, supporting one another. Also, we need a bit more robust research, and this can be done locally in your own area. And someone needs to take this on board, of research, just putting some deep research into how Muslim families are operating now and what issues people have. And then once we can collate that information, we can then start to think of ways of resolving some of this. Because not everyone has support. That's one thing I found as well. A lot of people are isolated. Not everyone's got an extended family. Not everyone's got relatives. For example, new Muslims, if they're in a situation. I mean, I had a new Muslim couple, both of them new Muslims, and they came to me. They're not married that long, and they're just in the early stages of their marriage. And you might think it was a trivial thing, but if it hadn't been dealt with, it would have got worse. So anyway, we dealt with it, and the brother was saying, alhamdulillah, he goes, I don't know where else would I have gone. Where else would I have gone? Because he goes, I can't go to my family. She can't go to her family, right? Where else do you people go? So there's a lot of people, our community is diverse, and we have to really be there for the people who have no support. This is what, all the things we read about in the fada'il and the virtues and akhlaq and behavior and all this kind of stuff. This is where it comes. It's not just about a theoretical thing, it's about implementing it. There's a situation where a sahabi was doing i'tikaf in the Prophet's mosque, and a person came in and spoke to him, and he was seen leaving the mosque, and the rest of the people asked him, he said, you're leaving i'tikaf, you're not allowed to leave i'tikaf. And he said, for me to fulfill one need of my brother is more beloved to me than i'tikaf in this mosque. Whose mosque is that? The Prophet's. So they understood the priorities of looking after one another and fulfilling the need of your Muslim brother or sister. And there's a lot of people out there that need your support, I guarantee you. And there's a lack of people willing to do it, and it can be devastating. I know one sister, convert sister. She was married to Pakistani. Anyway, the marriage broke down. They had 3 kids, but she got married again. She got divorced there as well with an Arab brother. But because of the lack of support she had from other sisters, she's now with a non-Muslim. She's pregnant with him, and she's taken off her hijab. She says that she still believes in God, but she doesn't know about Islam anymore. So this is where I'm just giving an example of how devastating it can be for some people, and that's just because people can be bothered. To take some time out of their life to check up on this person. So subhanAllah, we talk a lot, but we need to be working a lot more than we talk. Please, can you discuss the issue of rejection of both brothers and sisters based on race, ethnicity? Is it Islamic, un-Islamic? How to deal with it? Okay. Okay, so this issue has got to do with marriage. I mean, the thing of obviously from an Islamic perspective, there's no objection. The wali cannot object just based on race or ethnicity. However, if you'd asked me this question 10 years ago, the issue of the castes and this kind of stuff, and not to forget, a different ethnicity. Even if you're the same country, you're from a different area, you've got a problem. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, astaghfirullah, this is haram and all the rest of it, and there's nothing, this is caste system, got nothing to do with Islam. With experience of dealing with people, what I would say is that although Islamically, from an Islamic law perspective, it's not really a basis, but does it make a difference practically? And based on what I've seen, it does and it doesn't. Right? What I mean by that is for some people it does and some people it doesn't. For which people does it make a problem or an issue? For those people who are very cultural. If people are coming from a very cultural family, especially if, I mean, for the sisters going into that family, if they've got cultural, very entrenched in their culture, and they have certain norms, so they think things are normal, these things are just the way things are done, and the sister's from a different background, where seeing her family things are done very differently, then what will happen is when she comes into that new environment, they will expect her to change for them. Whereas she might come in saying, well, wait a minute, this is actually not, you guys are not really doing this properly. And they're going to say, well, excuse me, we've been doing this very happily for the last 30 years. You come along 1 week and you're already telling us what we should or should do. It's not, I mean, if you look at the issue, it's not something that the one's right or one's wrong. It's just a perspective. From her perspective, she sees it's different. From their perspective, it's different. So the issue of caste, it can be relevant sometimes when the family is extremely cultural, right? And there, it's easier, not that it's not impossible, but it's easier to have someone from a similar background because there's going to be less, confliction because they'll see the norms in their own family life, and they'll see their new family and they'll see that there's not much difference. The more difference there is, the more potential for conflict there is. Not that there will be conflict, but there's more potential. So it can work. However, it's you have to be very kind of open-minded and very accommodating. For other people who culture's not really a big deal, they're not really into it. A lot of people sometimes even say, I don't even know what caste I am, right? So some people, completely, it's irrelevant. For those people, it doesn't really make a difference. The most important thing is the family that you're going into or the people that you're going to be living with, do they share kind of similar values and principles as you? If they do, it's going to be an easier transition. The more difference there is, the harder you need to work. Okay, so the thing is, it can be an issue, it cannot be an issue. That's why this kind of question is better to actually speak to the two individuals involved. I might actually say to them, look, something on the balance of things, I don't think this is going to work out. Or I might say, yeah, there's absolutely no objection here. That's just the families are just being silly, and you should just go ahead and get married. However, do it in a certain way so that you take on keep both families on board. But it varies. The answer to the question will vary, and this is the nature because people are different. You can't just give one answer sometimes to every situation. So if anyone's got a specific issue, they can actually email me through the website Unity Family and make an appointment. I can speak to them over the phone and we can discuss that. What do you feel are the causes of increasing marital breakdown? Allahu Akbar, that's a huge question. Where do you start? The first and foremost thing I would say is lack of preparation. So one of the things with the premarital course that I do, that's just for single people. I go through all the things that a young person should think about before they decide who they're going to marry. I think that sometimes there's not enough thought put into the process of finding, like, if you married the wrong person in the first place, obviously the potential of that breaking down is higher. If you marry the right person from the beginning, then the potential for that to succeed is going to be better. So the first and foremost thing I would say is, how do we choose partners for one another? That needs to be really looked into. It's not the thing of 30 years ago, 40 years ago, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you, put them together, where's the imam, bismillah, right? And that's it. And they had perfectly happy lives. A lot of our parents, if you ask them, they'd say, oh, you children now, you want to speak to the other person. I didn't know who I was marrying. I just kind of went along with it, and I was shown a black and white photo of somebody else. I'm only joking. But you know what I mean? The thing was, they didn't really have much of a choice. They just kind of were put together and they had really happy lives. So that, I don't think that model is going to work now. You know, I mean, I've dealt with people who've been married weeks, and I'm not talking about one case or two cases or three cases. Weeks, some people months, some people a year, some people 2 years, some people in my 20 years, 5 kids. So a lot of it comes down to marrying the right person from the first place. Secondly, there are a lot of external factors involved, a lot of external pressures on couples. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's in-laws, right? Or as some people call them, outlaws, right? So there can be interference from outside. There can be just people grow apart. Some people, like for example, a couple, one becomes practicing, and then wants the other one to practice just as much as them. They grow apart. There can be a number of factors, and a lot of it comes down to, things like attributes that our older generation had that are not as strong, like patience, and also a very individualistic kind of society that we live in. It's all about me, me, me. So there's a number of things really, which is, you can't really summarize it, but there's a number of things. And in short, people need to realize that, you need to work at marriage. It's not something that's not easy sometimes, it's difficult sometimes, but you have to work at it. Like anything, you go to work, you put effort into your business. If you're not going to open your shop up and work hard hours, long hours, it's not going to prosper. So why is marriage any different? If you're not going to work at your marriage, you have problems, and you think, well, so, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to get out. You don't do that with business. You don't do it with education. You don't do anything else. Why do you do it with marriage? So marriage, you have to work at it. And like I said, one of the key things for us in preventing marriage will be preparing people through education before they get married, educating them whilst they're married, and also having a support mechanism when they have problems. So when they have problems, you say, look, don't leave it until it gets big. Come, either you set up something in terms of counselling or some sort of mechanism where people can come and they can discuss their issues and try and get some guidance. You need to get some of the ulama involved in that as well, and the local schools. So that's in terms of preventative measures. But thinking that it's just going to, like a lot of the times, what happens is people, they get their families involved, and that sometimes makes things worse, because then families are not like they used to be in the past. A lot of times they take sides, and it becomes, and then what happens is they need a neutral person, a third kind of neutral person who can just come in, not biased, and say, look, do this, do that, or whatever. So it's quite a complicated question, to be honest, and it's not easy to answer it in a Q&A. Very often young girls are married too young. It may be forced, but they are perhaps too young to make an educated decision. How can we promote a sensible age for marriage? How can a sensible age be determined? This is a difficult question, because if you do not get married people, if you don't get people married too young, if you don't get married people young and you leave them, now you've got a problem with people who've married in their late 20s, early 30s. Well, you have to have a sensible kind of age, because if you leave it too long, what happens is people, from my experience, get set in their lives. They start working, they start getting into a routine. The longer it goes on, the more rigid they become. And then at the age of 30 or whatever, you've been living your independent life for say 6-7 years after university. You've got your own money, you do your own thing, you don't answer to anyone. Then all of a sudden another person comes along, and you now have to accommodate that person. Then it becomes difficult. The people who are married at a younger age are generally a bit more flexible. These are just general rules, obviously it differs, but they're generally more flexible. There is an issue of people getting married too young. If you look at a lot of our mothers and fathers, or grandparents, they were married at 16. A lot of women were married at 16. They raised children, raised everything. But the maturity level of a 16-year-old then, and you'd look at a maturity of a 16-year-old today. And sometimes I look at my relatives and little nieces or whatever, 16. You think, subhanallah, she could never get married, because they're just not mature. They're still like kids. They're still, and it's not just there's people at university. They're in their early 20s. They're still like kids. So it's not about the age, it's about the maturity. And this is something that we need to work on as well. We are now extending childhood far too long. So, you know, that idea, he's still a bacha. What are you talking about? He's got a big beard and still a bacha don't have beards. Right? You know, the thing is, now people, you know, they're in their 20s, they're men. They're real, you know, they're proper men, and they're treated like kids. He's still a kid. He's not a kid, he's a man. And the thing is, Islamically, if you think about it, Islamically, when is a person an adult? When do we consider a person an adult Islamically?
Well, when they have the first sweat dream.
Puberty. Puberty is when a person is... Islamically, when a woman has a menstruational period, she's a woman. Needs to pray, needs to fast. She got money, needs to give zakat. Everything becomes obligatory. Same thing with a male, right? When they have the first nocturnal emission, that's it. They're a man. They need to pray and so on. So this is something that we need to inculcate in our children. When they get to that age, you're not a child anymore. You're an adult, a young adult, but nevertheless, like a young Muslim, why am I in it? Right? But nevertheless, you are an adult. So we have to get that through to children that you're not a child, you are a responsible adult now. You have to pray. My role is to give you nasiha, but you have to pray. You're responsible for yourself. You have to do this, you have to do that. So by doing that at an earlier age, treating them more like adults, it means that when they do become teenagers or early 20s, they'll actually be mature enough. The problem is that it's not about age, it's about maturity. The problem is that young people, we're not letting them mature. So they're immature when they get married. And that's why they end up making, either they don't know the decision to make, or when they do get married, they make silly mistakes. So the issue is about maturity, and that's something we need to kind of rectify. How can one go about organising, fostering, adopting of children on a large scale in the community? This is something that I'm working on. There's one of the brothers in Oldham, Amjad, what's his second name? Amjad. Mahmoud. He's part of what's it called, foster link or something? Muslim foster caring. He's just in Oldham, one of the brothers, and he's involved in this work. So you know, you've got someone on your doorstep. Speak to him, ask him. You know, set up a seminar. How difficult is it? Record it, put it on YouTube, right? Promote it. You know, there's people working in that field, practicing Muslim brothers that we can actually speak to and ask their advice, because it's their area, and we can ask them, what do you suggest? But definitely there needs to be raising awareness on that topic. For young people in this country, how applicable, if at all, is the model of performing the nikah early and spending some time getting to know each other, for example, months, years before living together. That's open to, I mean, that's an open thing for the couple, if they want to do that. Once the nikah is done, they're married. I mean, sometimes what happens is the parents will not allow them to get married. Say they're at university or something, they'll say, look, just be engaged, and sometimes engaged for 3-4 years. And what happens is they end up behaving like they're married anyway. So you might as well get the nikah done, and then after that, at least nothing's haram. So we need the parents on board here as well, because a lot of parents are not for it. They're like, no. They don't have a problem with engagement for a long period, but they have a problem with nikah. So this is where we can get the ulama involved and say to the ulama, look, you know, you don't do this, people are just going to get up to no good. So, you know, we might as well get the nikah done and make it halal for them. They don't want to live together, that's up to them. You know, they can make a mutual decision, whether it's studies or whatever it is. That's not a problem. But, you know, there are a lot of people falling into haram relationships. So we have an obligation to take them out of the haram. In terms of domestic abuse, often our parents' generation have accepted it as normal and are often not willing to question the status quo. Should we persist in discussing with them or concentrate on the new generation? Sometimes it can be difficult to convince the elder generation. As I say, you can't teach, you know, new tricks. So I don't want to use the expression of respect, but the expression has got the right meaning behind it, and it's not the best expression. But you know, people get, the lot older people get, the more set in their ways they get. And then if you come along and tell them, listen, you're telling me, right? You know, when I was your age, right? And you're like, oh God, here we go, right? So it's not worth it sometimes. But you can explain to them, look, through hadith, for example, the Prophet ﷺ never hit a woman or a child. You know, and through the seerah, and, you know, explain to him that this is the Prophet ﷺ, this is our example. He never did it. And so how can we say it's okay to do, and so on. You can try your best, but there's nothing wrong with giving da'wah to them, and that's your obligation done. You know, you've done your bit. Whether they accept it or not, that's something different. Obviously, the new generation is going to be a lot easier to educate. How would you advise we protect our children from sexual abuse? Should we speak to them about being vigilant? Is there a danger of being overprotective? How do you balance allowing them freedom and taking an active responsibility to protect? Sexual abuse of children is a reality, and that is something we cannot get away from. Now, the cases I've dealt with, okay, it's been when they've been young and vulnerable, but the Sharia rules are there for our protection. People feel the Sharia is restrictive, but if I look at any case where things have gone wrong, a lot of the times, you know, the Sharia rules have been broken, and it's led to what it's led to. So when you look at a lot of this child abuse, the cases I've dealt with, some have happened here, some have happened abroad, but it's usually a relative. Now we know khalwa is haram. We know khalwa, being alone with a person of the opposite sex, is not permissible under any circumstances. That's why they say al-halwa, right? I'm getting hungry now. They say al-khalwa haram walau kana bi bint Maryam bint Imran, right? That khalwa is haram even if it was with Mary, the daughter of Imran. In other words, even a pure person, right, you cannot be alone with them, or an old person, right? Khalwa is haram. I know so many situations where that rule has been broken, and then that's led to other haram activities. So, you know, just because somebody's a cousin or whatever, they're not mahram. They're not mahram, and they're not allowed to be alone with that person. So we have to inculcate this in our children, that look, you're not allowed to be alone with a person. If the child is never alone with someone of the opposite sex, like an older cousin, it will never happen. It will never happen. It can never physically happen. So that is the biggest protection, that we are careful of. For example, when our children are interacting with relatives, like who you allow your children to sleep over with, in terms of, you know, like staying over at someone's house, just being vigilant of inappropriate behaviour yourselves, and also teaching our children that, look, you know, we have certain ways of behaving, and if anyone doesn't behave like that, you let me know. And also inculcating in them that they should not be alone with a person of the opposite sex, whether it's an older cousin or whatever it is. And having an open relationship with your child, in the sense that the child should be able to come and speak to you about anything. And having that relationship from a young age, so that if there is anything on that child's mind, they'll come to you. And also, as parents, keeping an eye on the behaviour of the child. If the child starts to behave in a certain way, you can ask the experts on how people who are, you know, children who are affected by child abuse, sexual abuse, how they behave, how their behaviour changes. If you pick that behaviour change up in your child, then explore it with them. Is there anything wrong? Has something happened? Etc. Etc. So there has to be a bit more. We have to be a bit more vigilant in how we tackle that. Okay. So any other questions before? Otherwise, should we call it a day and have halwa? Have you got halwa?
The issue of khalwa with a member of the opposite gender. Can you clarify the Sharia point of view with regards to doing that with children as well? Because very often it's the case that, you know, babysitting, for example, is there an age when it kicks in, or is it from birth? Like,
the thing is, like, even they mentioned that you know, like, even your relatives, yeah, that are maharim, like, you know, people that you can't marry, like, you know, your sister and so on. They even mentioned in the books of fiqh, if because obviously this happens, you know, between, like, you know, sometimes with like a parent and a child. They say that if there's inclination there, shahwa, you're not allowed to look. So even things which are permissible to look at, if shahwa comes into it, you have to. That you're actually it's not permitted for you to look. So if it's that kind of situation, then it becomes impermissible. In terms of the details of the ages and stuff, I can't think of anything top of my head at the moment. Can you think of anything in terms of khalwa with children and things like that? Nothing. Yeah.
What I was taught, that particularly for men mingling with boys, like boys in particular, it's highlighted that that's something to be.
It's mentioned in the books of fiqh. It's mentioned in the books of fiqh, like they say, like, kind of young. Well, the way they mention it, because the norm used to be beards there, isn't it? Young boys who don't have beards, who are kind of like, you know, there's a danger there, because obviously with people of your own sex, you're not going to have as much restrictions with the opposite sex. So there can be a bit more, you know, barriers can be dropped. So basically, it mentions that in the books of fiqh too, so that you should be vigilant. And some of the madhabs, like the Shafi madhab, they're quite strict, that you can't look at them and things like that. Yeah, they're quite strict. Again, all of it's to prevent harm from happening. So, you know, a lot of things which in some cultures are allowed, I think we need to think again. You know, like holding hands, and although we don't do it, right, we don't really do it here in the Middle East. You know, they do it, and it's quite uncomfortable. You know, when another man holds your hand and you're not used to it. You know, I had to explain to them when I was in the Middle East, we don't do this. You know, and I feel very uncomfortable. Even when sometimes they meet you, sometimes they kiss you in the cheek, I just say, look, have fun, but, you know, there's only one person that gets to kiss me in the cheek, right? And it's not you. Right? So, you know, things like that, which are cultural norms, but if there's deviancy, sexual deviancy, someone might use that. So we have to kind of, like, you know, prevent it by saying, look, that's just handshakes enough, you know, and you know, holding hands, and, you know, because you know, in the Middle East and other kind of cultures, they're a bit more touchy, you could say. So I'm kind of against that. Maybe because I've dealt with so much stuff. I'm just saying, look, let's just none of that stuff. You know, just keep it. You know, keep it all kosher. Yeah. Yes.
I just wanted to say, Jazakallah for coming here and talking about this topic, because I remember suffering from a lot of things, and in essence it took me about 10 years to ask for help from the Muslim community. So I'm just happy that you came down and talked about it. Anytime,
inshallah. And my email's there through the website if anyone needs my help. And this is a very important point the sister just made, that sometimes it takes a lot for people to seek help. You know, sometimes they have a lot of barriers, especially confidentiality. One of the things we've worked very hard with our organisation is confidentiality, because unfortunately, as a Muslim community, we're not very good at that. And one of the primary concerns of somebody that contacts us is it confidential? You know, and it's a big responsibility. It's an amana, you know. We've got this as people's lives, and you can't just for the slip of a tongue, you know, let that go. Just like if someone had your secret, you know, with you, you know, how would you feel if they exposed you? I remember one of the brothers that came to me. It's quite a funny story. I'll just mention it. He was saying, look, it was after Eid Ramadan. He goes, Shaykh, I need to speak to you. I said, yeah, no problem. He goes, will you keep my confidentiality? I said, of course. He goes, you sure? I was like, I said, yeah. He goes, it's just that I've been to 3 imams, right, and they all broke my confidentiality. And the reason was because he wanted to marry he wanted to marry a daughter of an imam. So obviously they said, yeah, everything's confidential. And then when they found out who it was, they're like, oh. You know, and you're going to tell the dad. So, but you know, it is a responsibility, and people are genuinely afraid that people will find out. And that's why we're not affiliated to any mosque or anything like that. It's completely neutral, because people have to feel safe, and unfortunately a lot of times they don't. And this is a big problem with Muslim organisations, whether it's women's organisations or other organisations. Nearly all of them that I've dealt with, you know, I've had complaints of people breaking confidentiality. So that's something that we really need to, you know, we really need to kind of push to people, because otherwise people will not come forward. And like the sister said, for some people it takes them years. It can't, you know, years. They come to you and you break confidentiality, you just break their confidence, and they're never going to seek help again. So for some people it's extremely difficult, very, very difficult for them to reach out, and that's why we need to be a bit more proactive and not just wait for people to come to us. If we do these kind of things and we show people, look, we're here, we're willing to help, we're willing to listen, then it gives people, you know, a bit more confidence to contact us. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you not find that, you know, the traditional male mosque culture is geared towards keeping this kind of stuff from coming out? Because, you know, I'm a community worker, we understand for a lot of women, and many times when we're helping women who are abused, or we do feel the pressure really from certain mosque leaders and so forth that, you know, shouldn't be doing this, and, you know, you're breaking the community and you're opening the doors, the floodgates and all the rest of it. So that's why some women,
Yeah.
I find, they don't come
Yeah.
forward for years. It can go on for years and then after
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's a big problem. What you need to set up is a neutral, non-biased, non-judgmental, that kind of along those lines organisation. That's very difficult to do, especially when, because the thing with mosques and other things is that they have congregations that will fund them. We have a really bad budget, and that's because we've taken that decision not to be affiliated. And mosques did say to us, look, come and work with us, but we're like, look, I can't. I remember one of the cases really hit it home for me of why we had to stay like that. A woman came to me and said, a community woman quite high up, said, there's a case that I'm referring to you and you'll realise when it comes to you why. I said, okay. And when the case came, it was the wife of a mosque committee, one of the mosque committees. Now, that's her husband, he's in the mosque committee, who are the employers of the imam. She's not going to go to the imam. She can't. You know, and I've had other cases where sisters, you know, I've said, well, this brother, he's involved in the mosque, why don't you speak to the imam? She goes, I did, but then it got a bit messy, and he said, look, he's my friend, and he's not just a friend, but he's an employee. He's an employee because he's in the mosque committee, he can work against the imam. So the imam sometimes is in a difficult predicament, and he can't, you know, it's difficult for him to, you know, his position can be jeopardised. That's why it's important to have independent organisations. The difficulty with that is it's difficult to fund it from the community, because if they fund it, they want to be involved. And we're saying, look, no, we need your money, but we don't want you to be involved. That's the problem. Yeah, and so getting that through to people is difficult, but I think with the next generation, if we can convince them that, look, you know, we need your money, but we don't need you involved, because it could be your wife that needs help, and I have to do my job. I can't, you know, just because you gave money. This is half the problems. It's politics, isn't it? So I think it's going to be difficult to do that. In the short term, it's going to be difficult to do that. And in the meantime, we need to set up things independently.
But my question was also pertaining to, you know, the culture of these people. You know, it's like changing that culture where...
Yeah, I mean, some people said to me, look, some of the mosques said to me, you know, domestic abuse, forced marriage, you know, you're just creating problems. Why are you bringing this stuff up, you know, and it's just going to, you know, people are going to think we do this. I said, look, read the thing. It's a problem across the society. They're just very sensitive to, like, government initiatives or things come from the non-Muslim community. Yeah? They view it with suspicion. I'm like, look, they're telling you we've got a problem in our own community. So obviously you have a problem in your community. Now they're not going to come and speak to you, so they're going to get somebody that can speak to you, which is me. That's why I'm coming to you. You want them to come to you. So the thing is, they think that it's, you know, like, oh, you're singling out the Muslim community. We're not. If you read this, if you read the other stuff, and you speak to the police or whatever, they say, no, we understand that happens in other communities, but you as a community need to take responsibility for yourself. And the thing is, whether that's the case or not, what we should need to say to these people, or you're exposing us or whatever. Don't do the wrong things, and we won't expose you. But you're going to do something wrong, you don't want me to expose you. And then you have to come back to the deen, because the cultural things you say, well, man ra'a minkum munkar falyughayyir biyadihi. The hadith, the Prophet said that if you see something wrong, change it with your hand. فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If you can't do it with your hand, you don't have the authority like the police or whatever, the government, you do it with your tongue. فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And if you can't do it even with your tongue, do it with at least with your heart. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. And that's the weakest of iman. So that's hadith, clear hadith. We as a community, as a Muslim, I was giving a talk to the social workers about domestic abuse. So one of the social workers asked me, as a woman, she goes, I'm just really interested, what's your motivation for doing this as a man? She was just so, dumbfounded that a Muslim scholar, male, is talking about what was predominantly a female problem. Because her stereotype is that these guys is people like him that do it. So she's just like, what's your motivation? And I said, that hadith, I said, I am obliged as a Muslim, if I see something wrong, I need to change it. Whether that's against a woman, whether that's against an animal, whether that's against the environment, or a non-Muslim or a Muslim, that's my obligation. And she's just like shocked, totally shocked. So we have to come back to our deen. The answers are in our deen. And a lot of the times we create problems because of other things. This is not deen. Someone says, look, why are you talking about this? Because there's something wrong and we need to do something about it. And you should be helping me to do something about it and not covering up. And if you don't do something about it, then you're going to be held responsible for it, because you're in a position of authority. Something's happening, you're not doing anything about it, you have the ability to do it. You can answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yourself. We should always be on the side of the victim, not the perpetrator. So if someone's a victim, I'm on their side. Doesn't mean that you're going to destroy all your links and all the rest of it, but we say, look, we have to convince them that, look, we need to work together, but that's not acceptable. One person to be oppressed is not acceptable. All the oppression we talk about in the world, Muslims are oppressed, what about the oppression in your own community? Yeah, forget the oppression abroad. The oppression is happening in our community. You have the means to do something about it, yet you're not doing about it. So why are you talking about oppression then? And this, legal maxim, ad-dararu yuzal, qaida fiqhiyya, that harm should be eliminated. Simple. So a lot of it's us going back to our Islamic ethos, and when we do that, everything becomes clear of what our responsibilities are. And if they're not willing to take on the responsibility, or other people are not, then the least we can do is we take on the responsibility. We can't control other people's actions, but we can our own. Yes.
How are we specifically supposed to tackle or look at specifically the issue of marital rape?
That question, when it happens, right, when a couple come and that's happening, what I say to them is that if that is the state you've got to, that you cannot even communicate properly, that you have to go to that extent, that shows there's a wider problem there. So the solution to that is they've got a serious problem if that's what is being reduced to. And the way to solve that is to have the couple go through counselling, or go through some sort of mechanism with a third party where they can improve their communication and kind of readdress the balance, because something's wrong there. That's the way I deal with that anyway.